Within every human being resides a source of power so immense that, if it were unleashed in a single instant, it could rewrite the history of a life. A power capable of building empires, healing the body, and manifesting astonishing genius. This power is not a mystical gift reserved for a few. It is your heritage. It is the power of your own consciousness. But for most, this power remains dormant, or worse still, it is wasted. It's like having a colossal fire hose with immense pressure, but no nozzle to direct the stream. The water shoots out in all directions. A spray of anxious thoughts, a vapor of digital distractions, a trickle of half-started goals. The energy is there, but because it's dispersed, it lacks the force to move anything. It's powerlessness in the midst of infinite power. There is a drug, a substance not found in any external lab, but synthesized in the alchemy of your own consciousness. A drug that acts as the nozzle for that hose. Her drug that concentrates all that dispersed power into a laser beam of unimaginable potency, capable of cutting through the steel of any obstacle. That drug is absolute focus. This audiobook isn't a theory, it's a training manual. It won't give you more power because you already have it all. It will teach you to stop wasting it. You'll learn to eliminate the power thieves that sabotage your mind, to strengthen your concentration muscle until it's unbreakable, and to direct the laser of your attention to sculpt the reality you choose, not the one that's imposed on you. The most powerful drug in the universe isn't bought, it's cultivated. Chapter 1. The Mind as a Laser Beam. Let's observe a day in the life of the modern mind. The alarm clock rings, and before consciousness even fully settles into the body, the hand reaches for the phone. The first light the eyes see is not the sun's, but the blue light of a screen that floods the brain with a torrent of external information. Work emails, news of distant crises, the edited and perfect lives of others on social media. In the first 5 minutes of the day, the mind has already been hijacked, its power dispersed in a dozen directions, its emotional state stained by urgency, comparison, and anxiety. The workday begins. The intention is to work on an important project, but 3 minutes in, a notification arrives. An email. The mind switches contexts. It responds. It returns to the project, but a part of its attention, a cognitive residue, remains on the email. WhatsApp rings. Another change. A quick conversation. It returns to the project, but now the focus is even more fragmented. A browser tab is opened to look for a piece of data. 50 minutes later, the person realizes they have been lost in a black hole of videos and articles, completely unrelated to their original task. This is the condition of the scattered mind. It's not a character flaw. It's the result of an environment designed to hijack our most valuable resource, attention. We live in a constant war for our focus, and we are losing. This constant fragmentation not only makes us less productive, it is making us sick. At a neurological level, every context switch, every interruption is a small stress hit for the brain. It releases a microdose of cortisol. Multiply this by the hundreds of changes we make every day, and the result is a chronic, low-grade fight-or-flight state. We live with a constant tension, with a feeling of always being busy but never moving forward, of being exhausted without having created anything of value. We have confused movement with action, busyness with creation, and we have forgotten the fundamental law of power, the power of a single point. The light bulb versus the laser consciousness is energy. Your attention is the direction in which that energy flows. The difference between a life of mediocrity and one of mastery does not lie in the amount of energy you possess, but in your ability to concentrate it. Imagine a 100-watt light bulb. Its energy is dispersed in 360 degrees. It dimly illuminates a room, allowing you to see general shapes but without the power to affect anything. Its light is weak, diffuse, powerless. This is the scattered mind. Now imagine we take those same 100 watts of energy and through a series of lenses and mirrors, concentrate them into a single, coherent beam of light. We create a laser. That same power, once powerless, can now cut steel, perform precision surgery, send a message to the moon. This is the focused mind. The power to control your mind is the art of moving from being a light bulb to being a laser beam. A light bulb-minded student studies for 3 hours, with the phone nearby, music playing, and 10 tabs open. In the end, he barely remembers anything. His energy has been dispersed. A laser-minded student studies in 45-minute blocks of absolute focus, without any distractions. In those 45 minutes, he learns more than the other in 3 hours. His energy has been concentrated. An entrepreneur with a light bulb mind tries to grow 10 projects at once. His attention is so divided that none of them receive enough energy to take off. An entrepreneur with a laser mind chooses a single, most important project and directs all his creative force toward it day after day, until he breaks through all obstacles and it becomes a success. The universe does not respond to the amount of effort. It responds to the intensity of focus, the physics of focus, the observer effect in action. This is not just a good metaphor, it is a description of the physics of creation. As we have seen, the world at its most fundamental level is a quantum field of infinite potentiality, and it is the act of observation, of consciousness that collapses that potentiality into a reality. A scattered gaze, that of the light bulb, is a consciousness that observes thousands of possibilities at once. It weakly illuminates the entire field, but does not have enough intensity to collapse any particular wave. The result is a reality that feels random, confused, a mix of all possibilities manifesting in a weak and chaotic way. A focused gaze, that of the laser, is a consciousness that has withdrawn its light from all other possibilities and has concentrated it, with unshakable intention, on a single desired reality. This intense and sustained observation is a command to the quantum field. It says, of all the infinite versions of reality that exist as potential, collapse this one. Focus is not a simple productivity skill. It is the tool with which the seer sculpts the energy of the universe. The biology of focus, the most powerful drug, and here we come to the heart of our topic. When you manage to enter a state of deep focus, when your mind merges with the task and the external world disappears, your brain begins to synthesize its own most potent drug, a neurochemical cocktail that athletes call the zone, and that psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi named the state of flow. In this state, your brain releases a symphony of high-performance neurotransmitters, dopamine, which increases motivation and pleasure in the task, norepinephrine, which sharpens concentration and allows you to filter out distractions, anandamide, the bliss molecule, which silences the inner critic and encourages lateral and creative thinking, endorphins, which give you a feeling of euphoria and allow you to overcome discomfort. This cocktail is the most powerful drug in the universe. It cannot be bought. It cannot be injected. It can only be generated from within, and the only prerequisite for its synthesis is absolute focus. This state not only makes you feel incredibly good, it is the state in which you are most productive, most creative, and in which you learn at the highest speed. It is the optimal state of human consciousness. The tragedy of modern life is that we have created an environment that prevents us, almost systematically, from accessing this source of inner power and joy. The journey we embark on in this audiobook is to reclaim our birthright to this state. It is to learn to stop being the scattered light bulb, constantly interrupted and exhausted, and to become the focused laser, the master of our own neurochemistry, the director of our own universe. We have seen that focus is not a simple productivity skill. It is a state of being, a neurochemical drug that we can learn to synthesize, the key to unlocking our maximum potential. But how do you go from being the light bulb to being the laser? How do you cultivate this power in a world designed to fracture it? The initiate in the art of the mind does not leave his focus to chance. He cultivates it with a discipline and intention that border on the sacred. He enters his inner workshop and begins training. The first practice, the monotasking. Vow. The first act of rebellion against the culture of distraction is simple, but radical. The vow of monotasking. The initiate understands that multitasking is a lie. It is the most destructive myth of modern productivity. He knows, on a neurological level, that his brain is incapable of focusing on two cognitively demanding tasks at the same time. What he calls multitasking is, in reality, a rapid and constant switching from one task to another, a process that fragments attention, exhausts mental resources, and leaves a trail of mediocrity in everything it touches. Therefore, the master makes a vow. When he sits down to work, he doesn't say, "I'm going to try to concentrate." He performs a ritual, define the mission, First, he defines a single, sacred task. Not work on the report, but write the introduction of the report. Clarity is the first step of focus. Create the sanctuary, then he declares a holy war against every possible interruption. The phone is not put on silent. It is turned off and moved to another room. Irrelevant browser tabs are closed. Computer notifications are disabled. He creates a sanctuary of silence, a bubble of uninterrupted focus. Immerse yourself. Finally, he immerses himself in the task with total devotion. For the next 90 minutes, that task is not something he does. It is the entire universe. This act of deliberate monotasking not only allows him to produce work of exponentially superior quality, it is in itself an act of meditation. It is a training that teaches his brain over and over the feeling of deep focus. The second practice, the training of the attention. Muscle focus is not a gift. It is a muscle. And like any muscle, it is strengthened with training. The gym for this muscle is stillness. The practice is monofocal meditation. The initiate knows that meditation is not an act of emptying the mind. It is the most rigorous training there is for the prefrontal cortex. The director of his attention. Choose the object. He sits in silence. He closes his eyes. And he chooses a single, simple object for his attention. The most accessible and powerful is the sensation of the breath entering and leaving through the tip of the nose. Begin the training. His only task, for the next 10 or 20 minutes, is to keep the laser beam of his attention fixed on that single point. The conscious return. Inevitably, the mind, like a restless puppy, will run away. It will go after a thought, a memory, a worry. The beginner at this point gets frustrated. The master, on the other hand, smiles. He knows that this is the crucial moment of the training. With infinite patience, as if gently taking the puppy by the scruff of the neck, he accompanies his attention back to the breath. Each of these acts of returning is a repetition. It is a curl for his focus muscle. With each return, he is weakening the old habits of distraction and strengthening his ability to keep the laser beam steady and under his conscious control. The third practice, the art of deep work. The master does not just train his focus, he applies it. He understands that great breakthroughs, great creations, masterpieces only happen in states of total immersion. He practices the art of deep work. The initiate divides the world into two categories of activities: shallow work, tasks with low cognitive demand that don't create much new value; answering emails, attending meetings, performing administrative tasks; deep work, tasks with high cognitive demand that require focus without distractions. Writing a strategy, coding a complex program, composing music, learning a new skill. The initiate knows that his success and fulfillment depend almost entirely on his ability to perform deep work. Therefore, he structures his day and his week around these immersion blocks. He protects his hours of peak energy, usually the first hours of the morning, as if they were gold. Those hours are sacred. They are for deep work, and he relegates shallow tasks, busyness, to the valleys of his energy, to the afternoons. He knows that 2 hours of laser mode work are infinitely more valuable and productive than 10 hours in light bulb mode. The power to control your mind is not a metaphor. It is a skill that is trained. It is the art of gathering the scattered light of your consciousness and concentrating it into a beam capable of transforming your reality. Chapter 2. The Power Thieves. You are in the middle of a war, a silent, invisible, and relentless war. A war for the most valuable resource of the 21st century, your attention. To win this war, to reclaim your power of focus, you must first know your enemy. You must understand the strategies, the weapons, and the tactics of the power thieves who every second are trying to fragment your mind and disperse your energy. You must understand a fundamental truth about the world you live in. Your attention is the most sought-after commodity on the planet. The business models of the world's largest and most powerful companies, social media companies, news conglomerates, entertainment platforms, are not based on selling you products. They are based on capturing as many of your minutes of consciousness as possible and then selling those minutes to the highest bidder, advertisers. You are not the customer. You are the product, and your mind is the territory to be conquered. To achieve this conquest, These platforms have hired thousands of the world's most brilliant engineers, psychologists, and neuroscientists. Their sole mission is not to inform you or connect you, but to design systems so addictive that it is almost impossible for the human brain to resist them. They have built an architecture of distraction. This architecture is based on the deliberate exploitation of the vulnerabilities of our primitive brain. They use weapons of devastating effectiveness, intermittent variable rewards. This is the principle of the slot machine. You don't know when you will receive a notification, a like, a comment. This uncertainty releases dopamine and forces you to compulsively check your phone, looking for the next unpredictable reward. Social validation. We are programmed to crave the approval of the tribe. Every like is a microdose of social validation, a small hit of dopamine that makes us feel accepted and keeps us hooked, coming back for more. Infinite scrolling. They have eliminated any stopping signals. The infinite scroll on social media is a work of neurological evil genius. There is no end of the page that tells your brain it's time to stop. There is always something more, a new image, a new video, keeping your mind in a state of perpetual search. You have been recruited, without your consent, into a war in which your own biology is used as a weapon against you. To reclaim your power, you must first unmask the thieves. The first thief, the digital siren, your smartphone. The most omnipresent and intimate power thief is the device you are probably holding in your hand or have in your pocket right now, your smartphone. It is not a neutral tool. It is a portal to infinite distraction. It is a digital hypodermic needle that constantly injects you with microdoses of cheap dopamine, altering the chemistry of your brain and destroying your capacity for deep focus. The phone as a dopamine drip. As we have explored, dopamine is the molecule of motivation. But the brain doesn't distinguish between the dopamine obtained from achieving a long-term goal and that obtained from seeing a notification. The phone's is faster, easier, and more frequent. Constant phone use retrains your brain. It gets it used to a level of constant, low-quality stimulation. As a result, activities that require sustained focus and delayed gratification, reading a book, learning a skill, having a deep conversation, begin to feel boring. Your brain, addicted to the quick dopamine drip, no longer has the patience or capacity for the effort that deep work requires. This device has created an epidemic of what is known as phantom vibration syndrome, the feeling that your phone is vibrating in your pocket when it is not. This is not a simple anecdote. It is terrifying proof that this technology has infiltrated and rewired your nervous system at a fundamental level. Your brain has learned to anticipate distraction even when it's not there. Social media as the ego's casino. Social media platforms are the casino within the digital siren. They are the place we go to gamble our most fragile resource, our self-esteem. The comparison engine, their design is based on constant comparison. We see the carefully edited and filtered lives of others, their vacations, their successes, their perfect relationships, and we compare them with the raw, unedited reality of our own lives. This process is a guaranteed recipe for unhappiness and a feeling of inadequacy. It is a massive leakage of creative energy, which is wasted on envy and self-criticism instead of on building our own lives. The indignation machine. The algorithms of these platforms have discovered a dark secret of human psychology. Indignation is one of the emotions that generates the most engagement. Content that makes us angry, that polarizes us, that makes us feel morally superior to an other side, is the most shared, commented on, and viewed. Therefore, the algorithm, in its impersonal search for maximum attention, feeds us a constant stream of content designed to keep us in a state of agitation and conflict. This low-grade fight-or-flight state is the direct opposite of the state of calm and openness required for deep focus and creation. The illusion of connection. We have been sold the idea that these platforms make us more connected, but often they create the illusion of connection at the cost of true intimacy. We substitute deep, vulnerable, face-to-face conversations with superficial likes and quick comments. We are becoming a society of individuals who are lonely together, surrounded by thousands of digital friends, but feeling a deep emptiness of real connection. The first thief, the digital siren, doesn't steal your money. Fear steals something infinitely more valuable. It steals your time, your peace of mind, your self-esteem, and above all, your capacity to be present and focused. The most dangerous, most seductive enemy is not on our phone screen. It is on the inside. It is a program we have installed ourselves in our operating system, erroneously believing it to be a virtue. It is the myth of multitasking. In our culture of frantic productivity, the ability to juggle many things at once has become a badge of honor. The professional who can answer emails while on a conference call and at the same time plan his next task is seen as a model of efficiency. We have come to believe that multitasking is a high-level skill. The truth, backed by decades of neuroscientific research, is that multitasking is a lie. The human brain is, by design, a monofocal processor. It is fundamentally incapable of paying attention to two cognitively demanding tasks at the same time. What we call multitasking is, in reality, a process called task switching. It is the act of rapidly and constantly switching the focus of our attention from one task to another. And each of these switches, no matter how fast, has an immense neurological cost. The cost of the switch. Each switch requires your brain to unload all the information and context of the first task and load the new context. This consumes precious glucose and oxygen resources. The residue of attention, as researcher Cal Newport has shown, the switch is never complete. Part of your attention, a cognitive residue, gets stuck on the previous task. When you return to the report after answering an email, a part of your brain is still thinking about the email, drastically reducing your cognitive capacity for the report. The increase in errors. Studies show that people who work in an environment of constant context switching make up to 50% more errors. Cognitive exhaustion. This constant switching is incredibly demanding on your prefrontal cortex, the director of your attention. It's like doing hundreds of mental push-ups every hour. It leads to decision fatigue and burnout much faster. Multitasking doesn't make you more productive. It makes you busier, more stressed, and produces work of lower quality. It is a power thief disguised as efficiency. The third thief, the inner noise. Finally, we arrive at the most fundamental thief, the origin of much of our external distraction. The enemy is not just in the world or in our work habits. It is in the chaos of our own untrained mind. It is inner noise. The initiate in the art of focus understands that he cannot project a coherent laser beam if the source of the light, his own mind, is a whirlwind of noise. This noise has three main sources. Unresolved emotions. Every emotion we repress, every resentment we hold, every fear we don't confront, does not disappear. It stays in our system as background static, as a program that is constantly running in the background, consuming our mental energy. It is impossible to reach a state of deep focus if a part of your mind is constantly struggling to keep the ghosts of your past at bay. Open loops. The human mind hates unfinished tasks. Every promise we make and don't keep, every project we start and abandon, every decision we postpone creates an open loop in our psyche. Psychologist Bluma Zygarnik demonstrated that our mind remembers incomplete tasks much better than completed ones. Each of these open loops is like a browser tab you leave open in your mind. And each tab consumes a small portion of your mental RAM. If you have dozens of these tabs open, your processor slows down to a near halt. You feel overwhelmed, scattered, and drained, because your mind is spending all its power simply on remembering everything it has pending. The inner critic, the most insidious noise of all, is the voice of the inner critic. That incessant narrator who judges, compares, and criticizes our every move. You're not good enough. Who do you think you are? You're going to fail. This voice is the ultimate power thief, because it not only steals your attention, it steals your confidence. It keeps you in a state of contraction and fear, the direct opposite of the state of expansion and flow required for creation and deep focus. The practice of silence, the first act of recovery. The initiate knows that to fight the external thieves, he must first pacify his inner territory. His practice is not to fight the noise, but to create silence. One of the most powerful practices for this is the mental dump. The master, every night before bed, or every morning before starting work, takes a journal, and for 10 minutes he empties his mind onto the paper. He writes down every pending task, every idea, every worry, every resentment, without filtering, without order. He simply gets it all out of his head and puts it into an external, reliable system. This simple act is incredibly liberating. By externalizing the open loops, he frees his mind from the exhausting task of having to remember them. It's like closing all the unnecessary tabs in his mental browser. And in the space that is created, in the silence that emerges, there is finally room for focus. The power thieves are real. The external world, with its digital sirens, fights for your attention. And your own inner world, with the myth of multitasking and the noise of chaos, conspires to disperse it. You have unmasked your enemies. You have seen their tactics. The first step to winning the war is to know the battlefield. Now you know it. Knowing the enemy is crucial, but it's not enough. To defeat him, you need a weapon. You need a discipline. In the next chapter, we will explore the physics of attention, the science that will teach you how to forge the sword of absolute focus. Chapter 3. The physics of attention. Attention is the currency of creation. It is the primordial energy with which you buy your experiences from the vast catalogue of infinite potentiality. The quality of your life is a direct consequence of the quality of your attention. What you give your attention to flourishes. What you withdraw your attention from withers. There are no exceptions to this law. Imagine that the field of universal consciousness is a vast dark stage, filled with infinite sets, actors, and potential scripts. Your attention is the single powerful spotlight in that theater. The scene you choose to illuminate with the spotlight of your attention is the only one that becomes real for you. The others, although they coexist as possibilities in the darkness, remain latent. A scattered mind is a spotlight that flickers chaotically, briefly illuminating a fragment of one scene, then another, without the necessary coherence for a complete play to be performed. The result is a life that feels fragmented, incoherent, and without purpose. A focused mind is a stable, powerful, and directed spotlight. It is a director who deliberately chooses a scene, that of abundance, of health, of mastery, and keeps his light fixed on it, with unshakable patience and persistence, until that scene is fully illuminated and becomes the only play performed on the stage of his life. This is not a simple metaphor. It is a description of the fundamental architecture of reality, a truth that cutting-edge physics has had to accept, often reluctantly. The quantum revelation. The universe is watching you to understand the true power of your attention. We must travel to the heart of matter, to the strange and paradoxical world of quantum physics. For centuries, we have lived under the hypnosis of Isaac Newton's classical physics. It was an elegant, predictable, and above all objective universe, a cosmos that functioned like a great clockwork mechanism, composed of solid and separate objects that interacted according to fixed laws. In this universe, the moon is there orbiting the Earth, regardless of whether anyone is looking at it or not. Reality existed out there, solid and separate from us, and our job as observers was simply to measure and describe it. But at the beginning of the 20th century, a group of pioneer physicists who began to explore the subatomic realm, the very heart of matter, discovered that at that fundamental scale, the rules of Newton's universe were completely broken. They discovered a world that was not solid, not predictable, and not objective. They discovered the quantum realm, and at the heart of this new and strange realm, they found the most profound mystery of all, a mystery encapsulated in the famous double-slit experiment. Imagine you have a wall with two vertical slits and a detection screen behind it. If you fire small particles of matter like marbles through the slits, you would expect to see two lines of impacts on the screen, one behind each slit. And that is exactly what happens. Now, if you send a wave like a ripple in water through the same two slits, the wave will split in two, interfere with itself on the other side, and create an interference pattern on the screen, a series of many lines, where the crests of the waves have added up and the troughs have cancelled each other out. So far, so logical. Now comes the quantum magic. The physicists decided to perform the experiment with the smallest particles of matter, such as electrons. When they fired the electrons one by one, without any observer at the slits, what pattern appeared on the screen? Against all logic, an interference pattern appeared. This meant something impossible, that the single electron, as it passed through the slits, behaved like a wave. Somehow, it passed through both slits at once and interfered with itself, as if it knew where the future electrons were going to land to form the pattern. The electron, before being measured, was not a thing. It was a wave of pure potentiality. It existed as a cloud of all its possible locations at once. But this is where the mystery becomes even deeper and more directly relevant to the power of your mind. The physicists, perplexed, decided to spy. They placed a detector at the slits to observe which one the electron actually passed through, and the moment they did, the magic vanished. At the precise instant that the observer, the detector, measured the electron stopped being a wave of potentiality. It collapsed into a defined particle, passed through a single slit, and the pattern on the screen reverted to that of two simple lines like the marbles. Let's pause to absorb the implication of this. The simple act of observing changed the behavior of reality. The consciousness of the observer was not simply seeing an event. It was participating in the creation of the event. The universe did not seem to decide what form to take, wave or particle, until a consciousness paid attention to it. This is the observer effect. It is the most profound and, for many, most terrifying scientific discovery of all time. It completely demolishes the idea of an objective universe separate from us. It suggests that reality, at its most fundamental level, is not a fixed object, but a field of infinite potentiality that awaits interaction with consciousness to collapse into a defined experience. The physicist John Archibald Wheeler, one of the giants of the 20th century, called it a participatory universe. He said, "The universe does not exist out there independently of us. We are inextricably part of it. We are the shapers and the creators. Your attention is not passive, it is creative. It does not just illuminate reality, it invokes it." So how do we apply this cosmic power in our daily lives? How do we go from being an accidental observer who collapses realities by default based on his programming to a quantum orchestra conductor who deliberately chooses which symphony to manifest? The initiate in metaphysical secrets does not leave this power to chance. He cultivates it with a daily and deliberate practice in the workshop of his own consciousness. The first practice, the art of deliberate observation. The master knows that his attention is the tool with which he sculpts reality. Therefore, he becomes a master of deliberate observation. He does not allow the focus of his consciousness to wander randomly, illuminating the probabilities of fear and scarcity. He directs it with the precision of a surgeon. The practice begins each morning in the silence of dawn. The initiate does not begin his day by reacting to the world he sees. He begins his day in stillness, deciding the world he will choose to see. Before the sunlight enters the window, he turns on the light of his consciousness. He takes his journal and performs the daily blueprint practice. It is not a to-do list. It is an act of perceptual declaration. He writes in the present tense, a description of the reality he chooses to collapse that day. Today my consciousness seeks and finds evidence of abundance everywhere. I observe and collapse a reality of creative flow and unexpected solutions. I see harmony in my relationships and feel vitality in my body. This is not an act of fantasy. It is an act of command. It is the director giving the first instructions to his cosmic production team, setting the filter for his attention system. Then the master practices the art of as-if observation when faced with the current reality, the reflection of his old programming. He does not fight it. He observes it through the lens of his new reality. When looking at a bill, he does not observe it as a debt. He chooses to observe it as proof of the flow of energy, as an echo of the abundance that is already on its way. He does not deny the fact. He changes the observation about the fact. He is withdrawing his energy from the problem and placing it on the solution. The second practice, vibrational tuning. The master understands that observation must be charged with a frequency to be effective. The field does not respond to a cold analytical gaze. It responds to a burning heart. Emotion is the color and intensity of the light you project. The fundamental practice here is the heart coherence ritual. The initiate knows that his heart is the true sun of his system, emitting the electromagnetic field that organizes his biology and his reality. Several times a day, he takes 5 minutes to tune his field. He closes his eyes. He brings his attention to the center of his chest. And he begins to breathe slowly and rhythmically, imagining that the air enters and leaves through his heart. While breathing, he deliberately evokes a high vibration emotion. The most powerful of all, the one that contains the signature of creation itself, is gratitude. He does not think about gratitude. He feels it. He remembers a moment of deep appreciation. He feels that warmth expanding in his chest. By combining coherent breathing with elevated emotion, the initiate is doing something miraculous. He is transforming the signal he emits from an incoherent chaos to a perfect and harmonious sine wave. He is singing the song that the quantum field understands perfectly. He is tuning his being to the frequency of his wish fulfilled. The initiate can also use sound as a tuning tool. He knows that sound is organized vibration. The use of mantras, chants, or simply humming makes the cells of his body physically vibrate at a new frequency, helping to dissolve the energetic patterns of fear and disease. The third practice, surrender to the field finally. The master performs the most paradoxical and powerful act of all. After having established his observation with impeccable clarity and having tuned his vibration with perfect coherence, he does something that terrifies the ego. He lets go of control. He surrenders to the field. The initiate understands that his conscious mind, with its linear logic, is a tool that is too limited to be able to orchestrate the infinite complexity of manifestation. Trying to control the how and the when is like a single drop of water trying to direct the ocean's tide. Surrender is not passivity. It is the supreme act of faith. It is the transfer of the task from the mid-level manager, the conscious mind, to the CEO of infinite intelligence, the subconscious mind, and the quantum field. The practice is that of conscious release. After his intention ritual, the master visualizes his desire as a sphere of bright light, and then, with an exhalation, he lets it go. He hands it over to the universe with absolute confidence, saying inwardly, "It is done. I trust the process. I am open to receiving this or something better, in the most elevated way for the good of all." By letting go of the anxious need to control the outcome, he dissolves resistance. He creates a void that the intelligence of the universe rushes to fill, often in ways much more miraculous and elegant than his small mind could have conceived. You are no longer a solid object in a universe of solid objects. You are a vibrant field of consciousness in an infinite ocean of potential. Your attention is the chisel, your emotion is the force, and the quantum field is the clay. Chapter 4. The link between focus and belief. How does a flash of light become a permanent sun? How does a momentary observation transform into a law of your personal universe? The answer is found in the sacred link between focus and belief. We now come to the mechanism that turns an idea into a command, a possibility into a program. If focus is the act, belief is the result, and belief, once formed, becomes the automatic architect of your reality. Thought versus belief. We must once again delve into the crucial difference between a simple focused thought and a deeply held belief. A focused thought is a conscious act. It's like making a visit to a new country in your imagination. You can, with effort, visit it for 5 minutes, feel its climate, see its landscapes. But when you stop focusing, your consciousness returns to its habitual home, to your old state of being. A belief is your home. It is the country you permanently reside in, on a subconscious level. It requires no effort to be there. It is your default state. A thought is a command you give your mind once. A belief is a program that runs in the background 24/7, influencing every one of your perceptions, emotions, and actions without you even noticing. True manifestation does not happen through sporadic focused thoughts. It happens when you have used sustained focus long enough to install a new belief in your operating system. The conscious creator's goal is not to focus from time to time. It is to use focus as the tool to build a new belief, a new home for his consciousness. The question then is, what is the construction mechanism? How is focus used to pave a new belief in the neurology of our brain? The neuroscience of conviction. Rewiring your brain, what mystics have called faith or conviction, modern neuroscience calls neuroplasticity. It is the brain's ability to change its own structure and function in response to experience, thought, and attention. Your brain is not a static mass of tissue. It is a plastic and dynamic universe of 100 billion neurons, each capable of forming thousands of connections. Every belief you have, every habit, every trait of your personality is encoded in the architecture of these connections, and sustained focus is the main re-architecting tool you possess. The process follows two fundamental laws. Hebb's law. Neurons that fire together wire together. This is the fundamental principle of neuroplasticity. Every time you have a thought, a specific group of neurons fires in a particular sequence, creating a temporary neural circuit. If you have that thought only once, the connection is weak and fades. But when you use sustained focus, you are in essence ordering that same circuit of neurons to fire over and over again. You are creating a neural rehearsal. With each repetition, the synaptic connection between those neurons becomes stronger, faster, and more efficient. It's like blazing a trail in the jungle. The first time it's difficult and requires great effort. But every time you walk the same path, the vegetation is flattened, the trail becomes clearer, and the journey becomes easier. Myelination, paving the neural highway. As a neural circuit is used repeatedly through focus, the brain, in its infinite intelligence, decides that this path is important, and it begins a process of optimization. It sends special cells, called oligodendrocytes, which begin to wrap the axon of those neurons in an insulating fatty sheath called myelin. Myelin is like the rubber coating on a high-speed electrical wire. It prevents the signal from escaping and allows the electrical impulse to travel up to 100 times faster. A belief is not just a path. It is an 8-lane neural highway, perfectly paved and covered in myelin. That's why your old limiting beliefs are so automatic and so fast. You don't have to try to feel unworthy. The thought travels down a neural superhighway that you have been paving for decades. The art of installing a new belief is the art of deliberate myelination. Every session of sustained focus, every meditation, every visualization, every affirmation repeated with feeling is an act of construction. You are ordering your brain to divert resources from the old highways of limitation and to begin paving and myelinating the new highway of your wish fulfilled. The reticular activation system, the servant of belief once. A belief has been recorded and myelinated. It becomes the new main directive for your perceptual filter, your reticular activation system, RAS. As we saw, the RAS is the guardian that decides what information from the external world reaches your consciousness. And its criterion is simple. It looks for what its master, the dominant belief, has told it is important. Imagine a person who wants to overcome a fear of public speaking. Their old belief, their old neural highway is, I am a bad speaker. People will judge me. Their RAS is an expert at finding evidence for this. It notices every yawn in the audience, every skeptical face. This person decides to install a new belief. I am a confident and magnetic speaker. They begin the work. Every day they use their focus to fire and wire the new circuit. They visualize an audience applauding. They feel the emotion of confidence. They repeat their affirmation. At first, it's an effort. It's a small trail in the jungle, but they persist. Day after day, week after week, they walk that new trail, and their brain obediently begins to myelinate it. The trail becomes a highway. A time comes when the new highway is as wide and as fast as the old one, and then the RAS receives a new order. Now, when this person gets on a stage, their RAS, following the new directive, starts looking for evidence that they are a magnetic speaker. Suddenly, they notice the smiles in the audience, the nodding heads, the energy of connection. This new external evidence further reinforces the new neural circuit, creating a positive feedback loop. The belief has changed the perception, and the new perception has solidified the new belief. The manifestation is complete, not because of an external miracle, but because of a process of internal neuroengineering. Sustained focus is the mechanism that records belief, and belief is the command that directs perception, and perception is the force that collapses reality. We have understood the science of conviction. We know that sustained focus is not a mystical act. It is an act of neuroengineering. It is the physical process of rewiring our brain so that a new truth becomes our default reality. But what are the precise techniques that the master uses to maintain this focus long enough for the myelin to form? How is the battle against distraction and doubt won during this crucial period of construction? The initiate in the art of the mind does not leave his reprogramming to chance. He enters his workshop and becomes a craftsman of his decrees, an engineer of repetition, and a guardian of his faith. The first practice, the forging of the decree. The neuroengineer knows that the quality of the new neural circuit depends on the quality of the signal that creates it. Therefore, he becomes a craftsman of his decrees, of his affirmations. He does not repeat empty phrases he has read in a book. He forges his own command in the fire of his intention. Choose the identity. The practice does not begin with what do I want to have, but with who do I choose to become. He chooses the quality of being that is the cause of the manifestation he desires. Not wealth but abundance. Not success but confidence. Use the I am. The initiate knows that the two most powerful words in the universe are I am. He does not affirm I will be confident. He decrees I am confidence. This is not a declaration of a future. It is the declaration of a present identity. It is the most direct command that can be given to the subconscious. Charged with feeling, the decree must be forged in the heart, not just in the head. The master asks himself, how does confidence feel in my body? And then he pronounces the decree from that feeling. The second practice, the furnace of repetition. Once the decree is forged, it must be tempered in the fire of repetition. The neuroengineer understands that persistence is the key to myelination. He uses three main furnaces to record the new belief: the morning forge, the mirror ritual. The master begins his day with the most intimate and powerful ritual. He stands in front of the mirror, looks deeply into his own eyes, the windows of his subconscious, and pronounces his decree. He does not do it to convince himself, but to remind himself who he has chosen to be. He feels the vibration of the words in his chest. He observes the resistance of the old programming, and with a sovereign calm, again declares his new truth, the daily temper, the habit anchor. To keep the new circuit active during the day, the initiate stacks his new thought on top of existing habits. Every time he drinks a glass of water, he mentally repeats his decree. Every time he washes his hands, every time he stops at a red light, it requires no extra time. He simply associates the new belief with actions he already performs, creating dozens of effortless repetitions throughout the day. The nightly annealing, the sleep portal. The most important workshop is that of the drowsy state. As we have seen in this state, the guardian of the critical mind sleeps. The master uses the lullaby technique. He repeats his decree or a single keyword, abundance or health, over and over, gently and passively, until he falls asleep. He is handing the blueprint directly to the builder, without interference, so he can work on it all night long. The third practice, the shield of faith, the mental diet. The master engineer knows that while the new highway is being paved, the traffic from the old one, doubt, fear, the evidence of the senses, will try to divert him. Therefore, he raises the shield of faith. He practices the mental diet. This practice, taught by the great mystic Neville Goddard, is not a struggle. It is a discipline of attention. The initiate, when confronted by a thought that contradicts his new belief, does not argue with it. He does not get angry with himself for having it. He simply practices sovereign indifference. He acknowledges the thought, here's the old program of scarcity. He withdraws attention. And then, with a deliberate calm, he withdraws his attention from it. He closes the door on it, and immediately, he returns his focus to the feeling of his wish already fulfilled, to the feeling of his new belief. He is not suppressing the thought. He is starving it. He is cutting off its energy supply, his attention, and redirecting that energy to the construction of the new circuit. Every time he performs this simple act of refocusing, it is a victory. It is an act of conscious neuroengineering. The link between focus and belief is the key to self-mastery. Focus is the act, belief is the result, and reality is the reflection. Chapter 5. Protocol 1. The Distraction Fast. The first practical protocol for the master of focus is not an act of addition, but of subtraction. It is the art of creating a sacred void, a silence in which the new creation can be heard. Welcome to the first and most fundamental of the protocols, the distraction fast, the prerequisite for power, creating the void. The modern mind is a full mind, but not a whole one. It is cluttered, full of noise, irrelevant information, superficial obligations, notifications, and most of all, cheap dopamine. In this state of constant, noisy fullness, there is no space. There is no space for deep thought. There is no space for the voice of intuition to be heard. And crucially, there is no space for the new belief you are trying to install to take root without being trampled by the incessant traffic of mental chaos. The universe, in its essence, abhors a vacuum, but only in the sense that it rushes to fill it. All creation, from the Big Bang, was born from a state of primordial emptiness. The canvas must be blank before the artist can paint his masterpiece. The concert hall must be silent before the symphony can begin. To be able to deliberately create a new reality, you must first have the courage to create a void in your life. You must be willing to fast from the diet of constant stimulation that the modern world offers you. The science of the dopamine fast. Resetting your brain. The term dopamine fast can be misleading. It is not about eliminating dopamine, an essential molecule for motivation and life itself. It's about resensitizing your dopamine receptors, of resetting a system that has been hijacked and overstimulated to the point of exhaustion. To understand this, we must delve into the neurochemistry of our addiction to distraction. Dopamine, peaks and valleys. Your dopamine system has two components: a tonic level, which is your baseline level of dopamine, the one that determines your general state of motivation, and the phasic peaks, which are the bursts of dopamine that are released in response to an unexpected reward or a pleasurable stimulus. The modern hijacking, the modern world, with its social media notifications, its processed sugars, its video games, its pornography, is designed to give us phasic dopamine peaks of an intensity and frequency unprecedented in human history. Every like, every bite of dessert, every new image in the infinite scroll is a small hit of this drug. Desensitization, your brain, in its attempt to maintain balance, homeostasis, adapts to this overstimulation. How? By reducing the number and sensitivity of your dopamine receptors. This is the mechanism of tolerance and addiction. The same activity, checking your phone, begins to produce less and less pleasure, which forces you to do it more often to get the same reward. The devastating consequence, and here's the key, this process doesn't just make you addicted to cheap stimulation. It also lowers your tonic level, your baseline level of dopamine. This means that normal, natural and effort-requiring activities, reading a book, working on a project, having a deep conversation, exercising, stop producing enough dopamine to feel motivating. They feel boring, difficult, almost painful compared to the easy instant reward of the phone. You have become an addict, and your drug is distraction. And like any addict, you have lost control. It is no longer you who chooses where to put your attention. It is your hijacked dopamine system that drags you toward the next dose. The distraction fast or dopamine fast is the detox program. It is the act of deliberately eliminating, for a period of time, the sources of cheap, high-intensity dopamine. The goal, it is not to eliminate pleasure, but to resensitize your receptors. The mechanism, by depriving your brain of overstimulation, you allow your dopamine receptors to upregulate. They become sensitive again. The result, after a period of fasting, the miracle happens. Low-stimulus activities feel pleasurable again. Reading a book becomes fascinating again. Deep work becomes gratifying again. A conversation becomes deeply connecting again. You have restored your brain's natural ability to find motivation and joy in the things that truly matter. You have recovered your power of choice. We have understood the science of our dopaminergic imprisonment. We know why our mind longs for distraction and why deep work feels like a punishment. We have understood the need for a reset. But how do you carry out this fast in a world that conspires to overstimulate us? What are the practical rules of this protocol? The first practice, the distraction fast protocol. The distraction fast is not an act of masochism. It is an act of radical self-love. It is the decision to give your brain the gift of silence and boredom, the two scarcest and most necessary nutrients of the modern era. The protocol can be adapted to your level of readiness. Beginner level, the weekly oasis. The initiate often starts with an oasis of silence in the desert of the week. He chooses a manageable period of time, like the first 4 hours of a Sunday morning. During this sacred time, he commits to a strict fast from all cheap dopamine. Zero phone, zero computer, zero television, zero news, zero junk food. Instead, he allows himself to engage in low dopamine activities, reading a physical book, writing in a journal, walking in nature, meditating, or simply sitting in silence and observing his own thoughts. Intermediate level, the detox day. As his focus muscle strengthens, the initiate can extend the fast to a full day, 24 hours without artificial stimulation. This is a deeper challenge. This is where he comes face to face with the beast of his own restlessness. The first hours are often a hell of boredom and an almost physical longing for distraction. This is the withdrawal symptom. The initiate does not fight it. He observes it with curiosity, recognizing it as proof of how deep his imprisonment was. And if he persists at the end of the day, he experiences the miracle, a calm, a clarity, and a renewed sensitivity he had not felt in years. Advanced level, the integrated life. The master no longer needs scheduled fasting days because he has integrated the principles into his daily life. He has designed his existence in such a way that the distraction fast is his default state, and exposure to cheap dopamine is the conscious, controlled exception, not the rule. During the fast, the initiate learns a fundamental lesson. Boredom is not the enemy. Boredom is the portal. It is the empty space that precedes true creativity. It is in the absence of external stimuli that the voice of intuition, original ideas, and the connection to the self have the opportunity to emerge. We have fled from boredom as from the plague, and in doing so we have fled from ourselves. The distraction fast is the way back home. The second practice, the design of the environment, the architecture of focus. The dopamine fast is the system reset. It is the detoxification. But if after detox, you go back to living in the same toxic environment, the addiction will inevitably return. The true act of mastery, the long-term strategy, is not willpower but environmental design. The initiate knows that he is a product of his environment. Instead of fighting it, he becomes its architect. His goal is simple: to make it difficult to do what he doesn't want to do and easy to do what he does want to do. He builds an ecosystem that supports his master brain, not his primitive brain. Increasing friction for bad habits. The architect understands that the laziness of his primitive brain can be his greatest ally. If he can add even a small amount of friction, of effort, to a bad habit, it will often be enough for the brain to choose the path of least resistance. For digital distraction, the architect does not trust his discipline not to use the phone. He makes it structurally difficult. He deletes all social media apps from his phone. If he wants to use them, he must do so through the browser, which is a slower and less gratifying experience. He turns off 99% of notifications. The only notifications he needs are for calls from loved ones. He puts his phone in black and white mode. Without the vibrant colors, the brain finds it much less attractive. And the golden rule: during his deep work blocks, the phone is not placed face down on the table. It is turned off and placed in another room, in a drawer. The simple effort of having to get up and walk will be enough to stop 90% of compulsive checking impulses. Reducing friction for good habits. In the same way, the architect designs his environment so that desired behaviors are the easiest and most obvious option. For productivity, he prepares his environment the night before. If he wants to write, he leaves his computer open to a blank page with a pen and notebook next to it. He reduces the activation energy needed to get started. For reading, instead of leaving the television remote on the bedside table, he leaves a book. He has increased the friction for watching television, looking for the remote, and reduced the friction for reading. His brain, in its laziness, will often choose the book. For exercise, he leaves his workout clothes and shoes in plain sight next to the bed. This simple visual reminder reduces the mental barrier to getting started. The master of focus is not a superhero with infinite willpower. He is an intelligent architect. He has designed a sanctuary of focus, a physical and digital environment that makes it easy for him to be the best version of himself and difficult to give in to the worst. Chapter 6, Protocol 2, the muscle of concentration. This is the moment when many give up. They conclude that they are not made for concentration, that their mind is naturally scattered. But this is the biggest lie. Focus is not an innate gift. It is a muscle. And like any muscle, if it has never been trained, it is weak and flabby. But with the right, consistent, and progressive practice, it can become a force of titanic power. This chapter is your gym, and the only piece of equipment you need is your own consciousness. We are going to train the muscle of concentration, the mind's gym, the art of monofocal meditation. Before we begin, we must demolish the myths that surround meditation. Meditation, in the context of this manual, is not a religious practice. It is not about emptying the mind, an impossible goal that only generates frustration. And its main objective is not even relaxation, although this is often a pleasant side effect. Monofocal meditation, the one we are going to practice, is, in its essence, calisthenics for attention. It is the most rigorous and effective strength training for your prefrontal cortex, the director of your focus, the muscle that allows you to direct the laser of your mind at will. The exercise is incredibly simple in its design and incredibly challenging in its execution. It consists of 3 steps. Choose a single object of focus. Maintain attention on that object. When the mind wanders, and it will, inevitably, become aware and with a gentle firmness, bring it back to the object of focus. The real training, the rep that builds the muscle, is not in step 2. It is in step 3. Every time you realize you have been distracted and consciously redirect your attention, you are performing a push-up for your brain. You are strengthening the neural circuit of executive control. You are weakening the old habits of distraction and reinforcing your ability to keep the laser beam steady. The central protocol. The breath as an anchor. The initiate in the art of the mind does not sit down to meditate randomly. He treats it as the most important training of his day. He chooses his time and place. He chooses a time and place where he will not be interrupted. Consistency is key, so he often does it first thing in the morning. Before the world begins its assault on his attention, he adopts the posture of dignity. He sits in a chair or on a cushion with his back straight but not rigid. He knows that physiology influences psychology. A hunched back is the posture of submission and distraction. A straight back is the posture of alertness, of dignity, of the master on his throne. He chooses his anchor. Now he chooses his object of focus. To begin with, the most accessible and powerful of all is the sensation of his breath. Not the idea of breath, not the story about breath, but the simple and direct physical sensation of the air entering and leaving through the tip of his nostrils, or the gentle rise and fall of his abdomen. He begins the training, and then the work begins. His only task for the next 10, 20, or 30 minutes is to keep the spotlight of his attention anchored on that small, subtle sensation. He tries to notice every nuance, the temperature of the air as it enters, the temperature as it leaves, the brief pause between the inhale and the exhale, the conscious return. And here, inevitably, the mind, like a restless puppy, will run away. A sound will distract it. A memory will drag it into the past. A worry will launch it into the future. The beginner at this point gets frustrated. I can't do it. My mind won't shut up. The master, on the other hand, smiles inwardly. He knows that this is not a failure. This is the training. The moment he realizes his mind has strayed is a moment of victory, a flash of consciousness. And in that moment, without judgment, without anger, as if gently taking a puppy by the scruff of the neck, he accompanies his attention back to the breath, again and again, 100 times if necessary. Each of these acts of returning is a repetition. It is a weight lift. With each return, the prefrontal muscle is strengthened. With each return, he is teaching his brain, on a fundamental level, who is in command. The progression of training. The master understands that, as in any physical training, progression is key. He starts with short, manageable sessions, perhaps only 5 minutes a day, and his only goal is consistency. It is better to meditate for 5 minutes every day than for 1 hour once a month. As his muscle gets stronger, he gradually increases the duration of his sessions, 10 minutes, then 15, then 20. He can also increase the difficulty by changing the object of focus. Visual focus. He can practice the candle flame meditation. He sits in a dark room and places his unshakable attention on the brightest point of a candle flame, training his ability to maintain a visual focus without distractions. Auditory focus. He can use a mantra, the repetition of a word or a sacred sound like Om. The goal is for his attention to merge with the vibration of the sound, silencing the inner dialogue. Somatic focus. He can choose a single sensation in his body, like the beating of his heart, and anchor his attention there. The goal of all these practices is the same: to train the ability to maintain a monofocal focus, to be the master of one's own attention. We have explored the mind's gym. We have understood that meditation is not an escape, but the most rigorous strength training for our consciousness. It is the process through which we forge an attention muscle capable of sustaining unshakable focus. But a strong muscle in the gym is useless if you don't know how to apply it on the playing field of life. How does this capacity for concentration translate into creating value, producing masterpieces and manifesting a new reality? Now it's time to take that muscle to the playing field of life. It's time to apply your new power to create value in the world, to produce works of a quality and depth that the scattered mind could never conceive. The practice of deep work, the author Cal Newport, in his foundational work on the subject, defines deep work as professional activities performed in a state of distraction-free concentration that push your cognitive capabilities to their limit. These efforts create new value, improve your skills, and are difficult to replicate. In contrast, there is shallow work, low cognitive demand tasks, often logistical in nature, that are performed while distracted. These efforts do not tend to create much new value in the world and are easy to replicate. The tragedy of the modern professional is that his day has been devoured by shallow work. He lives in a whirlwind of emails, meetings, instant messages, and administrative tasks. He is constantly busy, but rarely productive in the deepest sense of the word. His mind, like a light bulb, dimly illuminates hundreds of small tasks, without the intensity necessary to create something truly extraordinary. The master of focus understands the deep work hypothesis. The ability to perform deep work is becoming increasingly rare at the same time that it is becoming increasingly valuable in our economy. As a result, the few who cultivate this skill and make it the core of their work life will prosper. The initiate does not leave his deep work sessions to chance. He makes them the central pillar of his professional life. And for this, he adopts one of 4 philosophies of focus programming. The monastic philosophy. This is the most radical approach. The initiate who follows this path eliminates or drastically reduces all sources of distraction and shallow work from his life. Like a monk in his monastery, he isolates himself to be able to reach the highest levels of concentration and creation. This is the path of some great thinkers or artists who retreat from the world to be able to create their masterpiece. The bimodal philosophy. This approach alternates between periods of monastic isolation and periods of complete availability. The initiate may decide to dedicate an entire month to a deep work project, disconnected from the world, and then return for the next 2 months to his shallow obligations. Or he can apply a weekly version, dedicating, for example, 3 days a week to deep work and 2 to meetings and emails. The rhythmic philosophy. This is the most accessible and, often, the most sustainable philosophy for most people. It consists of creating a daily ritual of deep work. The initiate turns focus into a habit. He chooses a sacred block of time each day, perhaps 90 minutes from 6 to 7:30 in the morning, before the world wakes up, and during that time, his only mission is deep work. Nothing else matters. By creating a constant rhythm, he reduces the need to use willpower to get started. The practice becomes automatic. The journalistic philosophy. This is the most advanced level of mastery. It requires an already well-trained attention muscle. The initiate who follows this path has the ability to enter deep work mode at any time an unexpected block of free time appears. Like a journalist who can write an article in the chaos of a newsroom, he can take advantage of 30 minutes between meetings to make significant progress on his most important task. The initiate chooses the philosophy that best suits his temperament and the demands of his life. But the underlying principle is the same. Deep work is not something you do when you have time. It is something you make time for. It is protected with the same ferocity with which a lion protects its cubs. The muscle of concentration is not trained for the simple pleasure of being strong. It is trained to be used. Deep work is the application of that muscle to create works of a value, quality, and depth that the scattered mind could never conceive. Chapter 7, Protocol 3. The imagination lens. Now that you have the ability to focus, we must answer the most important question. What are you going to focus on? We enter the third and most creative of the protocols. The Architect's Workshop, the cinema of the soul. We are going to explore the art of directing the laser of your attention through the imagination lens. Imagination is the most misunderstood and underestimated faculty of the human being. We have relegated it to the corner of children and artists, seeing it as a form of escapism, a daydreaming that takes us away from real life. But the initiate in the secrets of the mind knows the truth. Imagination is not an escape from reality. It is the workshop where reality is built. Every great human achievement, from the most imposing cathedral to the rocket that travels to the stars, first existed as an image held in someone's imagination. Imagination is not a fantasy. It is the quantum simulator of consciousness, the portal through which invisible potential becomes a tangible possibility. When you focus on an image in your mind, you are not simply thinking. You are performing an act of physics. You are acting as the observer, who, with the power of his attention, collapses the infinite probability wave of the quantum field into a particle of experience. Your imagination is the mold. The quantum field is the clay. The problem is that most of us use this divine power unconsciously and often destructively. Worry is nothing more than the undisciplined use of imagination. It is the act of using your mental workshop to build, with exquisite detail and immense emotional charge, vivid simulations of the futures you fear most. You are a first-rate horror film director, and your nervous system, which does not distinguish between a real experience and a vividly imagined one, reacts as if the catastrophe were already happening. The seer's protocol is to take control of the camera. It is to stop being a default horror film director and become the visionary director of your life's masterpiece. The fallacy of complex visualization. Many teachings on manifestation make a fundamental mistake. They encourage visualizing long and complex processes. If you want a successful business, they tell you to visualize every step. Product creation, marketing campaigns, client negotiations, employee hiring. While well-intentioned, this approach is often counterproductive for several reasons. It activates the logical mind. When you try to visualize a complex process, you inevitably activate your conscious analytical mind. And this mind immediately begins to introduce doubt. What if this step doesn't work? What if the market doesn't respond? This isn't realistic. The guardian of the old reality awakens and sabotages the process. It introduces failure points. Every step you imagine is an opportunity for doubt to seep in. If you can't vividly imagine one of the steps, you may conclude that the entire process is impossible. It limits the universe. By rigidly defining the how, you are limiting the infinite and often much more elegant ways the universe could orchestrate your manifestation. You are trying to draw a map with a limited knowledge of the terrain, the power of a single scene, the secret of wish fulfilled. The master of the mind knows that the subconscious does not respond to complexity. It responds to clarity and emotion. His power does not lie in imagining the journey, but in inhabiting the destination. The most potent technique of disciplined imagination is to hold a single, brief and powerful scene that implies your desire is already an accomplished fact. You don't focus on the how you will get there. You transport yourself in a quantum leap of consciousness to the moment after you have arrived. This technique is astonishingly effective because it completely bypasses the guardian of the logical mind. You don't present it with a plan to criticize. You present it with an accomplished fact, a memory of the future. When you create a scene of the end in your imagination, and you imbue it with the feeling of reality, your subconscious mind accepts it as a memory. And once it has a memory of an event, its only function is to work tirelessly to close the gap between that inner memory and your external reality. It strives to reproduce in the outer world the image it has already accepted as real in the inner world. The art of choosing your scene, the door to the end. The choice of this scene is an art in itself. It must meet 3 criteria. It must be a post-realization moment. Don't choose the scene of the moment of achievement, which is often charged with an excitement that is difficult to sustain. Choose a scene that would take place naturally after your wish has been fulfilled and has already become a normal part of your life. Example: wealth. The scene is not winning the lottery. It is perhaps a quiet conversation with your financial advisor a week later, where you discuss your investments with a sense of calm and security. Example: health. The scene is not the moment the doctor gives you the news. It is, perhaps, the simple and joyful act a month later of tying your shoelaces to go for a run, something that was previously impossible for you. Feeling the strength in your body. Example: love. The scene is not the first date. It is perhaps being on the sofa on a random night, with your partner's head in your lap, feeling a deep and serene sense of belonging. It must involve interaction. A scene in which you are alone can be powerful, but a scene that involves interaction with another person often has more power to convince the subconscious, because it anchors the experience in a shared reality. The key is that the interaction must confirm your desire: a friend who congratulates you, your partner who says "I love you," a client who thanks you for your service. These interactions act as external validation. Within your internal drama, it must be short and repeatable. The scene must be a short loop, no more than 10 to 20 seconds. This allows you to repeat it over and over in your mind, like a visual mantra, until it is ingrained in your subconscious. The seer's practice is one of the economy of imagination. He does not build an entire film. He builds the perfect trailer of the final scene. The workshop of the divine director. Practices of focused imagination. We have understood the philosophy and science of living as if. We have accepted our role as the method actors of our own divinity. But what is the rehearsal like? How does the actor prepare for his great role on the stage of life? The initiate in the art of focus does not leave his practice to chance. He enters his inner workshop with the discipline of a master and follows a process of embodiment. The first practice, the writing of the sensory script. The master creator knows that clarity is power. Before entering the theater of his mind, he first writes the script. He takes his journal, and with the precision of a screenwriter defines the scene he is going to rehearse. His first question is, what is the simplest and most natural scene that, if it were to happen, would imply that my desire is already an accomplished fact? The initiate knows he should not choose the scene of the manifestation itself, receiving the money, meeting the person, because it is often charged with an excitement that is difficult to sustain. He chooses instead a scene that would take place right after, a moment of calm, of naturalness, of already accepted reality. If the desire is prosperity, the scene could be a conversation with a loved one in which he casually says, "I've never felt so financially secure." If the desire is healing, the scene could be of him tying his shoelaces to go for a run, a simple act that was previously impossible for him. If the desire is love, the scene could be of him on the sofa, with his partner's head in his lap, feeling a deep and quiet sense of belonging. Once the scene is chosen, the initiate writes it in his journal not as a story, but as a first-person sensory script. He details what he sees through his own eyes, what sounds he hears, what textures he feels, and most importantly, what is the central emotion that permeates the entire scene: relief, gratitude, peace. This script is his score. The second practice, first-person immersion. With the script in hand, the director does not sit in the audience. He gets on stage. The most crucial practice is that of first-person immersion. The master does not see himself signing the contract. He feels the pen in his hand. He sees the ink flowing onto the paper through his own eyes. He hears the sound of his own voice saying, "It is done." He is tricking his nervous system, convincing it that the experience is real. The third practice, emotional amplification. A scene, no matter how vivid, without emotion, is a body without a soul. The director must now become the composer of the soundtrack. He asks himself, what is the feeling of the wish fulfilled? And then he uses the tools he already knows. He uses a past memory to evoke the emotion of triumph. He uses music to tune his heart to the frequency of joy. He uses his body, adopting a power pose, to generate the chemistry of confidence. And then he injects this emotion into his imaginary scene. He colors it. He gives it life. The integrated practice, the nightly rehearsal. The initiate knows that the most powerful stage, the theater where the subconscious is the only and most receptive audience, is the drowsy state. Every night he prepares for his rehearsal. He lies down, relaxes his body completely, And once he feels that the guardian of the logical mind is beginning to doze off, the real work begins. He doesn't force it. He simply, with a gentle intention, enters the scene he has scripted. He lives it, in the first person. He feels the congratulatory handshake. He hears the words of his friend. He feels the wave of calm and gratitude. And then the curtain falls. He returns to the beginning of the brief scene and repeats it, over and over, like a lullaby, like a gentle sensory and emotional mantra. The goal is not to stay awake and analyze the scene. It is to repeat it with a drowsy passivity until the feeling of reality floods him. And then he falls asleep. He falls asleep in the midst of his wish fulfilled, in his new home, in his new state of being. This act of impregnating the subconscious mind just before sleep is the most potent act of manifestation that exists. You are handing the finished movie to the most powerful projector in the universe, just before it begins its 8-hour shift of building your world. The imagination lens is your most creative tool. It is the portal through which the formless energy of consciousness takes a specific form. You have learned not to be a passive dreamer, but a deliberate director. Chapter 8. Focusing on Wealth. The first act of the master of focus in addressing wealth is to burn, with his laser beam, one of the most widespread and debilitating dogmas of modern entrepreneurship culture, the myth of multiple streams of income. We have been sold the idea that the path to financial security is diversification, that we should have a main job, an investment in cryptocurrencies, an affiliate marketing blog, a YouTube channel, an e-commerce store, and perhaps write a book in our spare time. We are told that we should not put all our eggs in one basket. Although born of an intention for security, this philosophy is, for 99% of people, a guaranteed recipe for mediocrity and burnout. It is the perfect manifestation of the light bulb mind. By dispersing your precious and finite energy of focus in 10 different directions, you ensure that none of your ventures receive the intensity of light necessary to ignite and become a true success. You end up with 10 weak, smoldering bonfires instead of a single, magnificent pyre. The initiate in the art of focus understands a counterintuitive but fundamental truth. Extraordinary wealth is not born from diversification, but from concentration. It is not born from having many small streams of income. It is born from creating a single massive source of value, the power of monogamy. In business, the universe of value creation, like that of love, often rewards monogamous devotion. The master of focus understands that his job is not to be good at 20 things. His job is to become the undisputed #1 in the world at one thing, at solving a specific problem for a specific audience in a way so exceptional that the value he creates is massive, and this mastery cannot be achieved as a hobby. It requires a level of dedication, obsession, and focus that is impossible to maintain if your energy is fragmented. Steve Jobs did not build Apple while running a consultancy and selling online courses. He obsessed with a monastic focus over the creation of the best possible product. A 3-Michelin-star chef does not reach that level by cooking a little Italian food, a little Japanese, and a little Mexican. He obsesses over mastering a single culinary art until he reaches a level of perfection that borders on the divine. To build something of massive value, you need to apply a laser beam of sustained, high-intensity focus for a long period of time. Any energy you divert to other projects weakens the beam. It prevents it from cutting through the steel of competition, doubt, and market resistance. Most projects never fail because the idea was bad. They fail because they never received the activation energy necessary to take off. The founder was too scattered. His light was that of a light bulb, not a laser. The initiate understands that the true path to financial security is not to have 10 plan Bs. It is to commit so deeply to plan A that it becomes inevitably successful. Diversification is a strategy to preserve wealth once it has been created. Concentration is the strategy to create it, the source of massive value, the intersection of 3 paths. We have established that the focus must be on a single source of massive value. But this leads us to the most important question of the workshop. How do we find that one thing? On what should we focus our laser? The answer is not found in analyzing market trends or in searching for the next big thing. The answer is found in a journey of inner archaeology. Your source of massive value always resides at the intersection of three paths: the path of obsessive passion, the path of natural genius, the path of a valuable problem. 1. Obsessive passion, your why. Cannot sustain a laser level. Focus on something you don't care deeply about. Willpower is a finite resource that gets depleted. Passion is an almost infinite source of energy. Your first task is to identify your sacred obsession, not a simple interest, not a hobby. An obsession. What is the topic you can't stop reading about, talking about, thinking about? What activity makes you enter a state of flow, where time disappears? What would you do even if no one paid you for it? This passion is the fuel for your laser. Without it, the beam will go out at the first obstacle. Natural genius, your how. Each of us is born with a unique combination of talents and natural abilities. This is your zone of genius. They are the things you do with almost insulting ease, things you often don't even consider a skill because they come so naturally to you. Maybe you're a born communicator, able to simplify complex ideas. Maybe you have a genius for organization, for seeing order in chaos. Maybe your gift is empathy, the ability to connect deeply with others. The initiate performs an honest inventory of his genius. He asks his friends and family, "What do you think I'm exceptionally good at?" Often others see our genius more clearly than we do ourselves. Your natural genius is the lens that shapes your laser beam, your unique way of projecting power. The valuable problem, your what. Passion and talent by themselves do not create wealth. They must be applied to solving a valuable problem for a specific group of people. The master of focus becomes an observer of the world. He listens to complaints, frustrations, unmet needs, and he looks for a problem he is passionate about solving and for which his natural genius is perfectly designed. He doesn't ask, "What business will make me rich?" He asks, "What valuable problem can I solve for others in a way that no one else can?" When you find the intersection of these three paths, when you apply your natural genius, your how, to solving a valuable problem, your what, driven by your obsessive passion, your why, you have found the target for your laser. You have found your single source of massive value. This is the most important work. It is not a 5-minute process. It can take months or even years of self-exploration. But once you have this clarity, the rest of the journey becomes exponentially simpler. You no longer have to decide what to work on every day. The decision has already been made. Your only task is to get up every morning and point the laser. The first practice, the monastic obsession. The master becomes a monk in the monastery of his purpose. His practice is that of sacred obsession, the unbreakable time block. The initiate knows that deep work, the work that creates extraordinary value, cannot be done in the small scraps of time between distractions. Therefore, he protects his hours of peak energy, usually the first hours of the morning, with absolute ferocity. That block of time, whether 90 minutes or 4 hours, is non-negotiable. It is his appointment with the divine. During that time, the outside world ceases to exist. There are no emails, no calls, no social media. There is only him and his great work, the art of saying no. To protect his sanctuary of focus, the master becomes an expert at saying no. He says no to good opportunities, so he can say a resounding yes to his single excellent opportunity. He says no to unproductive meetings, to requests that do not align with his mission, to social distractions that drain his energy. Every no he says to the superficial is a yes he gives to the deep. The second practice, the imaginal rehearsal of mastery. The initiate does not just focus his action on the external world. He focuses his imagination on the inner world. He uses the cinema of his mind to rehearse the success of his single source of value. His visualization practice does not center on the symbols of wealth, the car, the house. It centers on the process of mastery and the impact of his value. In his meditation, the initiate does not see the money he receives. He sees himself immersed in a state of flow, executing his skill with absolute perfection and joy. He feels the emotion of excellence. He sees the face of a client, a reader, a listener, transformed by his service. He feels the gratitude and connection that his value has created in another person's life. He bathes in the emotion of contribution and fulfilled purpose. He is programming his subconscious not for wealth, an abstract concept, but for value, a felt experience. He knows that wealth is the inevitable reflection of the value he has first embodied in his imagination. The third practice, the energetic signature of certainty. Finally, the master understands that the world does not respond only to his effort, but to his energy. His practice is to infuse his one thing with the energetic signature of certainty and inevitable success. He practices a strict mental diet, but one focused on his project. He refuses to entertain thoughts of failure. When doubt appears, what if this doesn't work? He doesn't fight it. He observes it, acknowledges its presence, and then deliberately returns his attention to the feeling of his success already accomplished. He refuses to participate in the energy of competition. He does not obsessively watch what others in his field are doing. He knows that his value is unique and that he has no competition. His only competition is with the version of himself from the day before. He holds the unshakable assumption that his unique value is desperately needed in the world and that his success is not only possible but inevitable. This energy of serene confidence, of non-need, is what makes his creation magnetic to the right opportunities, partners, and clients. Wealth is not found by dispersing your energy into 1,000 streams. It is created by digging a single well so deep that you connect with the vast underground river of universal abundance. Chapter 9. The Sacred Discipline of Persistence. We must now talk about the most insidious, subtle, and lethal enemy of all manifestation. We must confront the guardian of the old reality, the saboteur who masquerades as logic and reason. We must talk about doubt. If assumption is the act of planting the seed, doubt is the act of digging it up every 5 minutes to see if it is growing. It is the poison that is poured onto fertile ground, making it acidic and inhospitable to new life. No matter how powerful your intention, no matter how vivid your visualization, if you allow the poison of doubt to filter into your consciousness, your creation will die before it can sprout. The anatomy of doubt. The inner saboteur. To defeat this enemy, we must first understand its nature and its strategy. Doubt is not a simple state of not believing. It is an active and powerful belief in the negative. It is the thought charged with the emotion of fear that says, "This is too good to be true. This can't work for me. I'm going to fail." Doubt is the ego's immune system. It is the defense mechanism of your old identity. When you introduce a new and expansive vision of yourself, your old self, the one who feels like a victim, the one who believes he is unworthy, the one who is comfortable in his limitation, perceives it as a mortal threat. And to protect its existence, it deploys its most potent weapon, doubt. Doubt is the ego's attempt to drag you back into the security of the known prison. The 3 faces of doubt. This poison is administered in 3 doses, each directed at a different part of our being. 1. Intellectual doubt, the tyranny of how. This is the doubt of the rational mind. It is the saboteur disguised as intelligence and logic. Once you have assumed your desire, this voice appears and begins its interrogation. I don't see how this is possible. Logic and evidence say this can't happen. You don't have a plan, you don't know the steps, you are a dreamer. This doubt is born from the arrogance of the ego, from its belief that it needs to understand and control every step of the creative process. It is the inability to surrender to a higher intelligence. The ego, with its limited vision, can only conceive of paths it already knows, solutions based on its past experience. It cannot conceive of the miraculous, the synchronistic, the infinite, and elegant ways the universe can orchestrate a manifestation. When you get entangled in intellectual doubt, when you obsess over the how, you are trying to fit the infinite ocean of possibility into the small glass of your intellect. It is an act of limitation. You are, in essence, telling the universe, I will only accept my desire if it arrives in the one and limited way that my small mind can conceive. And in doing so, you close the door to all other possibilities. Emotional doubt, the impatience of the heart. This is the doubt that arises from the temporary delay between your imaginary act and its physical manifestation. It is the doubt born of feeling. You have been practicing your assumption for a week, a month, and you look in the mirror of the world and the reflection is still the same. And then The emotion arises: despair, frustration, disappointment. I've been doing this, and nothing has happened. Maybe it doesn't work for me. I'm wasting my time. This emotional doubt is an incredibly potent negative prayer. Every time you feel the frustration of waiting, you are emitting a vibration of lack. You are shouting at the universe, "My desire is not here." And the universe, which always responds to your dominant vibration, proves you right, reflecting more of the absence of your desire. Impatience is a form of distrust. It is proof that you don't really believe the seed you planted will grow. A gardener who trusts in the law of nature doesn't despair if he doesn't see the sprout the next day. He knows that gestation happens in the invisible. Sensory doubt, the tyranny of facts. This is the most powerful and most difficult form of doubt to overcome. It is when your five senses present you with irrefutable proof that directly contradicts your assumption. You assume the state of perfect health, and the next day the doctor gives you a negative diagnosis. You assume the state of prosperity, and the next day you receive a foreclosure notice. You assume the state of a harmonious relationship, and the next day you have a terrible argument with your partner. This is the moment of the great test for the initiate. It is the final battle between two realities: the invisible reality of your assumption and the visible reality of your circumstances. The senses scream, "Look, this is what's real, your imagination is a lie." And the temptation to abandon the assumption and fall back into the old state of fear and desperation is immense. Most people at this point give up. They conclude that metaphysics doesn't work and that they are condemned to their current reality. The poison in action, the cancellation order. Every time you give in to any of these three forms of doubt, you are performing an act of cancellation. Doubt is the counter-command that invalidates your original decree. It's like sending an email with an important order and 5 minutes later sending another one that says, "Please, ignore my previous message," the subconscious mind. Upon receiving these two contradictory commands, that of your assumption, "I am rich," and that of your doubt, "I am not rich," is paralyzed. It cannot build two opposing buildings on the same ground. And since doubt is usually charged with a much stronger emotion, fear, than assumption, nascent faith, the subconscious, by default, obeys the more potent command. And it continues to build the old reality of scarcity and failure. Doubt is not a harmless feeling. It is a creative poison. It is the acid that dissolves the fabric of your new reality before it has a chance to solidify. To become a master of manifestation, you must first become a master of neutralizing this poison. As with forgiveness, our culture has deeply misunderstood the nature of faith. We have equated it with hope, with an optimistic wish that things will turn out well. But hope, from a metaphysical perspective, is still an admission of doubt. Hoping for something to happen is admitting that it might not happen. True faith, the kind that acts as the antidote to doubt, has nothing to do with hope. Faith is not the belief that God or the universe will give you what you want. Faith is the unshakable conviction that you have already received it on the plane of consciousness, where all creation begins. Faith is not an emotion. It is a state of being. It is the unshakable loyalty to invisible reality. It is the conscious and deliberate choice to give more validity and more attention to the truth of your inner assumption than to the contradictory facts of your outer. World faith is not a mystical gift that some have and others do not. It is a muscle that, like any other, is strengthened with training. And the gym where the muscle of faith is trained is the battlefield of your daily life. Every time you are faced with the evidence of your senses that contradicts your desire, every time the serpent of doubt whispers in your ear, you are presented with a choice. You can give in to doubt, reinforcing the muscle of powerlessness. Or you can, with an act of sovereign will, withdraw your attention from doubt and return to the feeling of your wish fulfilled. Every time you do this, you are doing a rep in the gym of the soul. You are strengthening the muscle of faith, the workshop of the faithful warrior. The practices of faith. The initiate in metaphysical secrets does not leave his faith to chance. He becomes a faithful warrior, the guardian of his own vision. His practice is to maintain the purity of his consciousness. The first practice. The guardian at the gate, sovereign indifference. The master knows that he cannot prevent thoughts of doubt from coming to the door of his mind, but he has the absolute power to decide whether to let them in. His practice is that of sovereign indifference. When a thought of doubt or fear appears, the initiate does not fight it. He does not get angry with himself for having it. He simply observes it with a quiet detachment, as if he were seeing an unwelcome stranger at his door. He acknowledges the visitor. Here's the thought of this is not going to work. He does not engage, he does not offer it a chair. He does not start a conversation. He does not give it his energy. He withdraws attention, and then he simply closes the door in its face. Not with anger, but with a calm and sovereign indifference. He withdraws his attention from it, and immediately and deliberately returns his attention to his inner home, to the feeling of his wish already fulfilled. This practice, repeated over and over, teaches the mind that thoughts of doubt are no longer welcome, that they no longer have power. The second practice, the alchemy of revision. The master knows that, sometimes during the day, in a moment of carelessness, the poison of doubt can seep in. An external event can trigger an old reaction of fear or frustration, pulling him out of his state of assumption. To purify his consciousness before sleep, he practices the alchemical art of revision. As we have explored, the initiate, in his drowsy state, reviews the events of the day. If he finds a scene where he gave in to doubt or fear, he isolates it in the theater of his mind. And then, like a film director, he rewrites it. The conversation in which he stammered out of insecurity is rewritten as a fluid and confident dialogue. The moment of panic upon seeing a bill is rewritten as a moment of calm and gratitude. He repeats the revised scene, charging it with the feeling of his ideal state, until it feels more real than the original fact. This act is not self-deception. It is karmic cleansing. It is refusing to allow the negative energy of a moment to become a seed for the next day. It is the act of going to sleep with a clean consciousness aligned with the desired vision. The third practice, the fast from external evidence. The faithful warrior understands that he should not feed his enemies. Therefore, during the gestation period of his desire, he puts his 5 senses on a fast from negative evidence. This is one of the most difficult and most powerful disciplines. It consists of the conscious choice to withdraw your attention from anything that contradicts your assumption. If you are assuming wealth, you stop obsessively looking at alarmist economic news. You stop participating in conversations of complaint about the crisis. You stop compulsively checking your bank account, looking for proof. If you are assuming health, you stop looking up your symptoms on the internet. You stop constantly talking about your illness. You are not denying reality. You are refusing to give it your creative power. You are starving the old reality, depriving it of the only nutrient that keeps it alive, your attention. And at the same time, you are directing all that released energy to nourish the new reality within you. Doubt and faith are 2 sides of the same coin. Belief. Doubt is the belief in failure, in limitation, in the evidence of the senses. Faith is the belief in success, in possibility, in the evidence of the invisible. You, as the sovereign of your mind, are the only one who decides which side of the coin to look at. The poison of doubt dissolves in the antidote of a persistent faith. You have learned to protect your creation. You have learned to be loyal to your vision, even when the world shouts that it is impossible. Chapter 10. Focus as a state of being. The goal of the piano apprentice is not to practice the piano for the rest of his life. It is to reach the point where he forgets the scales and the technique, and simply he becomes the music. The goal of the martial arts apprentice is not to practice the movements. It is to reach the point where, in a moment of crisis, the movement arises from him without thought, with an instinctive perfection. We now come to the culmination of our journey, to the moment of final integration, to the moment when you stop practicing focus and you become a focused person. Welcome to focus as a state of being. From doing focus to being. Focus throughout this manual, we have talked about protocols and techniques. They are the scaffolding necessary to build the building of a new mind. But once the building is finished, the scaffolding is removed. The change we are talking about here is a profound transformation of identity. It is the difference between a person who goes to the gym to get strong and a person who is strong. For the first, training is a task. For the second, strength is an inherent quality that is expressed in everything he does. In the same way, the initiate in the art of focus, through persistent practice, reaches a tipping point. Concentration stops being an effort, a struggle against distraction, and it becomes his natural state. Calm and clarity are no longer something he seeks in meditation. They are the ground he walks on. This is not an abstract idea. It is a neurobiological change. Through constant practice, you have so deeply myelinated the neural circuits of focus that they have become the default highway of your brain. And the old roads of distraction from disuse have begun to be reclaimed by the jungle. You have rewired yourself, living from this new state. From this unified mind is manifested through three jewels, three fundamental qualities that permeate every aspect of your existence. The first jewel, the quality of presence. The first and most fundamental quality of the unified mind is an unshakable presence. The scattered mind lives in time. It is constantly traveling, dragged by the ghosts of past regrets or by the specters of future anxieties. Its energy leaks in 1,000 temporal directions. The present is just a blurry way station. The unified mind, on the other hand, has made peace with time. It has anchored its consciousness in the only point of power that exists, the eternal present moment. The past is no longer a burden it drags. It becomes a library, an archive of lessons and wisdom that it can access at will, but in which it no longer resides. The future is no longer a source of anxiety. It becomes a canvas, a field of potentiality onto which it can project its intentions, but whose arrival it does not wait for with impatience. Its home is the now. This presence is not a state of passive Zen detachment. It is a state of total immersion. When the focused master talks to someone, he is 100% there. He listens not only to the words but to the silence between them. When he works, he merges with the task. When he eats, he savors every bite. This ability to be fully present ends the inner civil war. Most of the average human's mental energy is wasted in the conflict between what he should be doing, what he did in the past, and what he fears will happen in the future. By anchoring his consciousness in the now, the unified mind puts an end to this war. And all that energy, once wasted in inner conflict, is released and becomes available for creation, connection, and joy. The second jewel, the quality of clarity. The second quality that emanates from a unified mind is a crystalline clarity. The scattered mind is like a lake agitated by a constant storm. Its surface is murky, it is impossible to see the bottom. Decisions are made blindly, based on the chaotic movement of the waves of fear and desire. The unified mind, through the practice of calm and focus, has allowed the waters of its consciousness to settle. The mud of reactive thoughts and unprocessed emotions has fallen to the bottom, and now the water is transparent. This clarity manifests in several ways. Direct perception. The master sees situations as they are, not through the distorted filter of his projections and fears. He sees people, not as archetypes from his past, but as the being they are in that moment. This clear vision allows him to act with astonishing wisdom and effectiveness. Sharpened intuition. True intuition is not a magical voice shouting from the sky. It is the subtle whisper of the subconscious mind, the wisdom of your deep self. In a noisy mind, this whisper is inaudible. In the stillness of the unified mind, the voice of intuition becomes clear and reliable. It becomes the main compass for navigation, effortless decision-making. The paralysis by analysis, the agony of endlessly weighing the pros and cons, is a disease of the scattered mind. The unified mind makes decisions in a different way. It is not based solely on logic. It is based on resonance, and, faced with a choice, he feels the energy of each path, and he chooses the one that resonates with a feeling of expansion, of peace, of an inner yes. His decision process is fast, intuitive, and surprisingly accurate. The third jewel, the quality of serene power. Finally, the unified mind radiates an aura of serene power. The power of the lower levels of consciousness is noisy, forced, based on effort. It is the power of the warrior who shouts on the battlefield, that of the achiever who runs frantically. The power of the unified mind is silent, magnetic, based on being. It is the difference between the brute force of an explosion and the immense and silent power of gravity, which keeps the planets in their orbit without making a single sound. This is the culmination of our laser metaphor. The focus practitioner must consciously turn on his laser beam for a specific task. It is an act of effort. The master no longer needs to turn anything on. He is the laser. His natural state of being is one of coherent focus. His very presence has an organizing effect on his environment. People feel calm around him. Solutions to problems seem to appear naturally in his field. Opportunities seem to seek him out. It's not that he is actively attracting these things. It's that his own coherent energetic signature, that of a mind at peace with itself, creates a resonance field that repels chaos and attracts harmony. The state of flow, which for the scattered mind is a rare and accidental experience, for the unified mind becomes its normal way of operating. Life ceases to be a series of tasks to be completed and becomes a fluid and joyful expression of creativity and purpose. The workshop of the unified self. The practice of non-practice. We have explored the three great jewels of the unified mind: presence, clarity, and serene power. We have seen the summit, the state of being that is the destination of our journey. But how do you live this in practice? What are the subtle disciplines that the master uses, not to train but to maintain this state of grace? The answer is paradoxical. The master's practice is no longer a series of techniques that he does at a specific time. His entire life becomes a practice, a moving meditation. The techniques, the distraction fast, monofocal meditation, deep work, were the scaffolding needed to build the building of his new mind. Once the building is finished and solid, the scaffolding can be removed. The practice is no longer something he does, but something he is. This state of mastery, of embodiment, is supported by three living pillars. The first pillar, anchored presence, living the I am. The basis of a masterful life is presence. The master has trained his attention to the point that he can maintain a double focus consciousness. One part of his attention is engaged with the task at hand, with the conversation he is having, with the world of form. But another part of his attention always remains anchored in the silent background of his own being. In the feeling of the I am, it is like a master musician who, while playing an incredibly complex melody, is always aware of the tonic note, the harmonic center that holds the whole piece together. This constant connection to inner silence is what allows him to move through the world of noise without being swept away by it. The initiate's integrated practice is constant anchoring. In the middle of a business meeting, he feels the energy in the room, but he also feels the calm in his own chest. As he walks through a bustling city, he observes the external chaos, but he is also aware of the silent space of his own presence. In a difficult conversation, he listens to the other's words, but he also listens to the silence beneath them, the essence that communicates beyond language. This double focus is the anchor that keeps him at the pendulum's point of suspension, allowing him to experience life fully without getting lost in it. The second pillar, intuitive alignment, action from the self. The master no longer makes decisions based solely on the ego's logic or on lists of pros and cons. He has learned to trust a higher form of intelligence, the one that emanates from a unified and silent mind. His decision-making process is based on alignment. The practice is the alignment question. Faced with any choice, from the smallest to the most momentous, the master does not ask himself, "What is best for me?" He asks himself, "What choice feels most aligned with the being that I know I am? What path resonates with greater expansion, with greater truth, with greater love?" Sometimes the alignment answer will seem completely illogical to the rational mind. It may ask him to leave a secure but soulless job, or to initiate a vulnerable conversation that his ego fears. But the master has learned through experience that the path of alignment, though sometimes the most difficult in the short term, is always the path of least resistance in the long term. It is the path that the river of life wants to take through him, and he has learned to trust that current, the third pillar, service as an overflow. Finally, the person who lives at the peak of consciousness discovers the true purpose of power. Absolute focus is not cultivated for egoic self-gratification, but for expression and service. The master's service is not a forced activity. It is not a should. It is the natural overflow of his own wholeness. His cup is so full of peace, clarity, and power that it inevitably spills over and nourishes the ground around him. The practice is not to ask, "How can I help?" It is to ask, "How can I be the fullest and most authentic expression of myself?" For the artist, service is creating the most beautiful and honest work he can, knowing that its beauty will elevate the consciousness of those who contemplate it. For the entrepreneur, service is building a business that is not only profitable, but that solves a real problem, that treats his employees with dignity, and that operates ethically. For the parent, service is offering their children a presence of unconditional love and calm, creating the environment for another soul to flourish. For the friend, service is simply listening, offering the space of his non-judgmental presence so that the other can find themselves. The master knows that the form of his service is irrelevant. The only thing that matters is the source from which it emanates: a unified mind, a coherent heart, a peaceful being. Focus as a state of being is not a destination. It is the beginning of a life lived as art. It is the endless dance between stillness and creation. You have completed the manual. You have learned to detox your mind from distractions, to train the muscle of concentration, and to apply it with mastery to create value and achieve your goals. You have stopped being a victim of your scattered power and have become its director. The most powerful drug in the universe is no longer something you seek. It is something you are. You have been initiated into the master's protocols, the distraction fast to create silence, the concentration muscle training to forge strength, and the application of focus to manifest mastery and abundance. The fundamental truth you have discovered is this: the external world will always be a hurricane of information, chaos, and distractions. True mastery is not trying to stop the hurricane. It is becoming the calm, silent, and all-powerful eye that resides at its center. You don't control the world. You control your focus, and by controlling your focus, you control your world. The most powerful drug in the universe is not an escape from reality. It is the tool for a masterful participation in it. Your journey does not end with the end of these words. It is now that your true life as a focused creator begins. Your practice from today on is a choice you make every instant. Faced with the chaos of the world, you will ask yourself the master's question: where do I choose to put my attention now? Remember always, your attention is the substance of your power. Do not give it away. Invest it with the wisdom of a king. If this manual for mental mastery has resonated with you and has ignited your inner fire, we invite you to continue this exploration. Subscribe to our channel, Path of Knowledge, for more wisdom that transforms. Like this video as a declaration of your new power of focus. Share this knowledge with someone who is ready to stop being a victim of distraction. Thank you for your time, for your dedication, and for the brave decision to reclaim the power of your own mind.